Welcome to Everything is Dead, the show where we challenge the myths of B2B and uncover how go-to-market professionals are thriving in channels everyone says are dead. Today, we're diving into Outbound with Keith Fearon, Head of Growth and Product at 11X. Keith, welcome to the show, mate.
Welcome. Thanks, Ben. Great to be here.
No, excited to have you on, and I think you're uniquely positioned, given the product and given what you're building at 11X, to have a really strong opinion on the topic that we'll be discussing today. As is common with every one of these shows, I'd love to open up with a statement and just get your gut reaction to it. So if I said to you, mate, Outbound is dead, how would you
Mhm.
react to that statement fundamentally?
Yeah, and I think it's something we keep hearing. I would say outbound, poor outbound is dead. And the reason I say that is it's easier than ever to outbound. We have all of the tools to send emails. We have all of the tools to ensure that they get through to the inbox, etc. And it's just clogging up the inbox. So I'd say low relevance, generic template emails type of sequencing outbound is dead.
Yep.
But everything else is thriving better than ever.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. It's actually, I think, a common piece that I've chatted to a few outbound experts, and I think everybody can agree that if you're still doing the same, like I'm gonna use like a data platform, I'm gonna put in a basic ICP, I'm gonna download a list of 10,000 contacts and send generic message
Mhm.
to everyone. I think your likelihood of succeeding with that method is extremely low. But you're right, people are succeeding with outbound, and actually, you're in a good position to say this because your product is fundamentally making good outbound a little bit easier. So I guess next question for you would be, what strategies and tools are you seeing help people succeed with outbound in 2024 and moving
Yeah.
into 2025?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'm noticing a lot of is that there's two things really. One is like the purpose of outbound, and the second is more tool related. And the thing where I'm noticing a lot lately is the traditional outbound where the goal was you need to get the demo, cast the line if you're fishing with the bait and reel it in and get the fish all in one go. I've noticed more and more people are doing different tactics, like trying to drive people to the website so they can actually read on their own time and about your product or your company, or share some piece of content that is helpful for the recipient, not with the mindset of let's get a meeting today, but with the mindset of let's like provide something of value to this person today, and hopefully they'll become like an organic form fill in the coming weeks or months. The second thing I'm noticing a lot more of is it's easier than ever to use a large database like a Claire or something and access people who've just changed jobs. And so these traditional like intent signals are actually performing worse than if you were just to email a random audience, because everybody is now going to email that person who's just changed jobs. It's literally and anyone on LinkedIn can try just update, change your job title, you'll receive 300 emails the following day. And so it actually outperforms worse. So you need to rethink how you're doing that and more emulate like how a human would go online and actually do proper research, not looking for low hanging kind of intent signals, something that is actually more meaningful.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple of interesting components there, right? I think we definitely prescribe the motion that you suggested up front, which is like, and Adam Robinson coins it like push versus pull type
Mhm.
outbound. And so I think, and especially in our world, we're a PLG company. And so fundamentally, we need to market really well to get people to know about us, to understand our value proposition, and then obviously sign up for the platform. And so I 100% agree there. And the different tactics, obviously, we can maybe dig into around how do you even market your solution to get people to the website initially? The second
Mhm.
component, which I think you mentioned, is actually, I don't think it's a polarizing point of
Yeah.
view. I think it's interesting in the way that actually all the talk on LinkedIn at the moment is signal based outbound, right?
Mhm.
You get that all the time. And a signal could be a job change. It could be, I'm sure you guys at 11X probably got a bunch of emails when you announced your funding. That's another signal that people
Yes.
use for outbound. And so on that second point around like signal based outbound, do you prescribe by any specific signals, or do you rank them in a hierarchy of certain signals are good, certain signals not so good?
I think the point of outbound is to find people who have a problem and show them, try to educate them on your solution. It's try to help people, right? And signals is the type of thing where maybe it indicates that, maybe it's not. Like someone changes job, it doesn't necessarily mean that if anything, they actually have less understanding of the pain points of that company they're joining. It more means that maybe their calendar's not full of meetings yet and they don't have all these responsibilities, so they have time to open. And so it's actually almost perverted incentives, because the SDR's mindset is I need to get a meeting to hit my quota. And so maybe that meeting turns into an opportunity, maybe not. And so we actually don't prescribe signals really at all. We more look for properly like a human would by talking to people at the company. We use AI to talk to people at the company or to do research, but any cold calling SDR, human SDR does this too, is we talk to people that actually understand like what their pain points are or who at the company might be feeling it. And then to try and sell this, show the solution rather than, you know,
Yeah,
this
I think,
pure type of signal.
yeah. And I think you're spot on. Like the way that I've always thought through, and again, I hate coining this phrase signal based outbound because it's been around for ages, right? And again, people listening to this, I would actually say that sometimes new hire can be good, but through the lens of your message shouldn't be you're a new hire, so buy my solution. The way I think through it as somebody that's been new in role, your first month, 2 months in role is getting the lay of the land. You typically will do a tool assessment at some point to understand what's the landscape of my tech
Mhm.
stack, what are people using, what are people not using. And so I actually totally agree with you. A good way to do it is a drip feed of, hey, you're new in role. These are the things that you're probably doing at the moment. By the
Mhm.
way, here is
Mhm.
the problem we can solve. So as they go down that route of actually, yeah, like video prospecting. Oh, we've got a video solution. People aren't using it. Let's maybe look at the vendors and see if there's a different way of doing it. I think that's where it works. So
Yeah.
I totally agree with you from the mindset shouldn't be trigger, sell. The mindset should be get into the mindset of what your prospect is doing as
Mhm.
a buyer and then write good cadences that kind of follow that. Is that kind of the way that you think about it as well?
Yeah, exactly. Rather than trigger sell, it's trigger educate or
Yeah.
trigger this type of thing. Exactly. And they're useful. I wouldn't bet the house on them is what I,
100%.
um,
100%. Let's dig into the piece where I think most people listening to this episode will be most interested, right? AI SDRs,
yeah.
again, polarizing, I think, discussion point in the market,
Mhm.
right? A lot of people are saying, hey, actually, a lot of the work the SDR does in a typical role that you're paying $60,000, $70,000 for somebody to do can be duplicated through the use of an AI SDR. Some
Mhm.
saying totally the opposite. Maybe tell me like 11x is obviously going after this vision and believes that it's a true use case. Maybe educate people on why you think and obviously what you're driving towards from a
Yeah.
value.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I like totally get people's point of view. A year ago, I would never have thought this would be a thing. A year ago, I would have thought, oh, you'll never lose the human touch in an SDR position is so critical that AI will never infiltrate there. Then I thought about it more over time, and it's a bit like I've never heard somebody wake up and go, I'd love to speak to an SDR today. This type of thing. A bit tongue in cheek, but that's like the first point that kind of opened my mind a bit more to it. And then I thought about it more, and it's like in today's like landscape of SDR world, you have like two types really. You have like ones with a super high quota where they basically have to use a very generic email template and just send a ton of emails because they cannot, if they want to hit their quota, they just don't have time to do that level of research. So they just have to spam the town. Then you do have the type and that first type, maybe they book you a lot of meetings up front and over time it dilutes your brand, etc. But they hit their numbers. The second type you have is like the ones that go online and do the proper research, etc. But maybe they only book 5 meetings a month. And what we're offering is basically that second version, but at scale. And so it's actually a better experience for the buyers because what's funny enough, I keep seeing on LinkedIn, like all of these people with screenshots, look at these AI SDRs. They're not from an AI SDR usually. They're from a human who's using a generic template
You
with a
need
few
to be
variables.
like, write me a cold email type thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's a template because what we're offering is basically something that goes and finds people with your pain point and actually tries to tailor how we could help. And it's very light touch and it's much better experience for a buyer or like a prospect, let's say. And so that's what our vision is.
And I think like the one, I agree, like a lot of the screenshots you can tell, and I get personalized one-to-one outreach messages that have clearly been put through GPT as well. So I think there's a counterpoint there. In terms of the nuance though, so I'll get back to your point around, okay, you can't, you lose the human touch and you lose this and you lose that. What would you say to people that maybe think that actually I want more of type two? I want people to do the really deep account research. And then I guess second point is if somebody responds, how does the AI handle that? Because that's the one thing that I've always had a hang up on, which is the conversational part of the AI,
Yes.
which actually 100% you can get me on board all day long, mate, with the fact that account research takes a bunch of time. AI can do that. I use Perplexity before calls
Mhm.
all the time to basically run like a a company name, our pain point, their 401k, and be like, what are things that people do it? I do it all the time. So that piece
Mhm.
you can sell me on all day long. What would your counterpoint be to like the actual conversational aspect and the response and the
Yeah.
nuance? Right.
I would challenge, there's a few, there's so many points here, but like one like easy example is I'd challenge anyone to go in their CRM and start searching through previous email interactions. There's a few things here. One, you'll notice human SDRs or human salespeople make a lot of mistakes and
Yeah.
a lot more fabrications or hallucinations in AI world than we make in terms of AI or any AI mix. For example, now AI is compared to perfection, whereas humans isn't, which is somewhat valid. But that's the first thing I noticed. You'll start noticing, oh wow, my human ones make a lot of mistakes here in how to handle scenarios. The second thing I'll say is you'll start noticing all these leads that you've dropped through the cracks. People saying, "Oh, now's not a good time. Reach out again in 2 quarters." Human won't remember that usually. Or people saying, "I'm not the right guy. It's actually this person, this department." Maybe someone goes online, looks for 5 minutes. Oh, and then it's lunchtime, and then they leave and they forget. Versus the AI SDR will remember everything, is able to go online, find that person, reach out to them for the original email and say, "Hey, Jim said you're the guy, and I'd love to touch base if this makes sense." In
Yep.
terms of the conversational flow, there's three options we have right now, which and I'd say most customers choose like a fully automated thing, actually, especially after they're comfortable with it. The other two options is one, you just get all the replies into your inbox and you can manually take over. The second is like an ambient AI scenario where you get like a Slack or a text with, "Hey, just got this reply. I plan to say this. Does that sound okay?" And it's almost
Really?
like a remote worker. It's
Yeah,
almost
yeah, yeah.
approve, or you can tell it to change something, or you can say, "I'll take over from here." And it's basically like a remote worker where you can Slack or call them, but you never really see them in person necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And I the actual the use case that you outlined right at the start, I think is absolutely spot on, to be totally honest with
Hmm.
you. Even the best SDRs in the world, I think their workflow is typically like, okay, reach back in a couple of months. They might put a calendar
Hmm.
notification, then reach out to Keith in 2 months' time. But when they see that calendar notification in 2 months' time, they're gonna be like, I have no idea either who Keith is or what the context was, and then they've already got other activities to do. So I actually like the way that you explain that. Let's get back to the piece where we started, which was like outbound is dead for a lot of
Yep.
companies. I think one of the points you bring up, which is critical to good outbound, is account research. And you
Hmm.
walk through how your models or your AI SDRs are able to do really good account research in minimal time. And I think
Hmm.
the account research piece is the foundation for good outbound, right? If you do good account research,
Hmm.
it leads into your message, your ICP, all that type of stuff. Let me ask you just a more generic question. What makes good account research? What are your AI SDR models looking at to
Yes.
do that account research? Because I actually think that's a good foundational piece for everybody, whether you're using an AI SDR or you're an SDR that's just doing account research in general. What makes good account research
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
your
Yeah, I can give some. Yeah, exactly. And there's a few things here. One is that the basics is like internet research, right? Everybody can do that, has access. Databases won't cut it anymore. You need to be able to use the internet like a human. And so if your AI tool can't go live on internet, but I think we're at a foundation where everybody AI can pretty much do that and human can do that. Go on, read about the account a bit. The next thing is this sort of idea of like first party connection or like talking with them, where it's I email you, Ben at SenseSpark. You tell me some piece of information. No, actually, that's not a problem for us. This is though, and maybe at 11x, we have a different product that solves that. Me as an AI, let's say, would let the other AI know of that product to reach out to SenseSpark. And so this idea of first party data we learn from speaking with the prospect and combined with the internet research. The last thing goes beyond the account research. And it's actually like one thing that's skipped all the time, especially if you have a super broad ICP, like SenseSpark, I'm sure is not too specific on any industry, let's say. It's like
pretty
actually
horizontal? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly, yeah. What's going on in that industry? Like what's the challenges going to be to the company? And like one example I'll have is we have a customer who does roofing uh, repairs. And the AI's first idea was I should target people where a weather storm just happened. It,
Yeah.
that was day one. It did that. But then what it realized was if I'm emailing companies who are just in the news for losing their roof, like I'm too late. They've already got a repair. So then what it realized, this is like a few days later, because it's self-learning, I should look for places, locations where there's upcoming weather storm. And it would reach out and say, warning, you did bad weather. I hope everything will be okay. We're always here at your side. Like if you do need repairs. Sure enough, the day after the storm, flooded with inbound requests. And so that type of understanding, it can apply to so many industries, but those challenges and upcoming ones better than the recipient does. Like you being able to understand your
Preemptive.
pain points.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I love that you use roofing as an example because actually a lot of people will be purely like SaaS, but
Exactly.
and
Yes.
that point is perfect because you could use the use case of compliance, right? For
Hmm.
example, a law's going into to be passed, and so you can get stuff out before. Hey, by the way, this law looks like it's being passed, and these are some of
Hmm.
the things to provide you with. So I love that because it's preemptive pain analysis, which
Yes.
actually goes above. You look at like the Bomboras and Sixth Sense of the world, which is the intent data.
Hmm.
Pre-intent data is like that's insane if you think about it, right?
Exactly.
You're telling the prospect they can have a pain point before they even are aware of it themselves, which is awesome, right? And you're getting to the
Hmm.
front of the queue, which is unbelievable. Let's move into what I would call second step of outbound, right? So we've talked about good account research. You've explained how AI can actually preempt pain, which I think is phenomenal.
Hmm.
Like definite light bulb moment for me with the roofing company example. Message comes second. And so I think the argument would be great. I buy in, AI can do all this research for me. How do I take that and create a message which is good?
Yeah.
Copywriting is typically the point where people are like, humans copyright way better than
Yes.
it. So what's your kind of response there from I've done my research, what's the copy component?
So it is like something like super. One point of frustration for me is like quite interesting externally, but for me, it's super frustrating is that people think that they're so much better at writing copy than they are. And so what will happen is you'll have the AI write something and they will want to intervene and change it, whatever, fine, we let them, but it will perform worse. And if they were so good at the copy and stuff, they would have so much business flowing in that they wouldn't necessarily need us. And so it's like a super big pain point for me is like, how do I like build the trust and demonstrate? Because maybe if we never educate them on that and they continuously use their input, they'll get poor results from us and think we suck. But in reality, so like this type of ideas, we have one example is we're implementing like an email coach that if they make a change, it says why it thinks it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
And this type of stuff. But so the point I'm trying to say is that it's super frustrating because people will think that would never work or why is it saying that? But it is optimizing towards providing value to the recipient. And it is going to do that at levels that go beyond like human, to be honest. I have yet to find a human that can outperform it.
We should do, and
Yes.
like this is just something that I think would be interesting is how like a lot of companies will do their original research pieces. Like Hockey Stack's really good at putting out original
Yes.
research pieces.
Hockey
I
Stack
almost
Labs.
wonder you should do a survey where it's like an A/B. Which do you prefer, this copy?
Hmm.
And to your point, if your model's correct, you can just run that piece and be like, here's why AI is better at copyright. 90% of people pick the AI copy. That would be a cool survey to run, I think, from an end user standpoint.
Yeah, I was actually speaking with Imar from Hockey Stack about this, and he was saying even beyond that is hire some human SDRs and have them compete against Alice or AI one, trying to book meetings for us and show the results, or get some real human data and show like the reply rate, meeting rates, all of this type of stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%. Because I
yeah.
think again, that distills like, especially if you're doing independent studies, right? Nobody can then come back to you and be like, actually, I don't agree. It's that wise. That's the
Hmm.
best from a market education standpoint. The other thing that you bring up, which I think I'd agree with you with, people that are writing copy are writing it from the perspective of what is the type of email that I would like to.
Hmm.
You have it through the lens of you. And actually, you're right, because if you think about a prospect list of 1,000 people, each person's different from a communication style. Each person likes different stuff, so to speak. I like the way that you kind of position that as actually like it's optimizing for human, not
Yes,
for specific human. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it. So we talked about account research, like the roofing story, I think is going to be a great clip. Like I think that is preemptive pain analysis is awesome. We talked about copy in terms of like meetings on the calendar, right? Fundamentally, that's what it comes down to. In terms of like when they get that response, your SDR, and now it's like there's interest or that, yeah, that sounds interesting. How are they handling the actual booking component? Like, how do you complete the process of AI
Mhm.
SDR to demo on
Yeah.
calendar?
No, exactly. So there's a few things we've experimented with here over time. It's at first we started with because it's just another example of the customer would it was super requested that we have a Calendly link or equivalent or like a link to their calendar. We would send that, but it was too much sort of friction and too much optionality that like kind of the recipient would almost become a little bit. It was just too much friction. It was like if they did bother to click on and then have a form that pops up and you have all these dates to pick, and it's also not really necessarily how most humans book meetings. It's becoming more common, but most humans still say there's 3 p.m. work. So now it understands your calendar as Ben or whoever it is sending on behalf, and it can easily understand if you want to tell it account ownership or anything like this. There's all the different rules. It has access to your CRM. It can understand all of that data. And it suggests 1 or 2 times to book the meeting. And if the prospect doesn't make it work, can't make it work, it will suggest more. It confirms time zones, all of this type of stuff. If they don't show up to the meeting, if they no show, it will email a follow-up, say, hey, I noticed you're not on the meeting, blah, blah. If you have Jordan or voice version, he'll call to make sure you, just like a human SDR would. Everything
Well,
is basically modeled just after a human SDR would operate.
cool. Love it, mate. Love it. And so like, I guess, tactical piece here, right? Like people that are listening to this that are probably at different stages of growth. You probably
Mhm.
have early stage startups, you probably have more mature companies. Is there an ideal time in your mind to buy an AI
Yeah.
SDR? Do you have an opinion on when people
Mhm.
should start considering this as part of their go-to-market stack?
Yeah. So what I would say is that early on, we didn't necessarily have an opinion. Was we were discovering our own ICP. We sold to many people we didn't know were like a year ago. And one trend we noticed was people who didn't have an existing sales motion that went beyond sort of founder-led sales were not a good fit for us because usually they were trying to skip the step without realizing it of discovering that product market fit by going to an AI SDR. And if you do not have product market fit, it's not like our product would magically sell
Yeah.
for you. So you need to have usually it implies if you have at least 1 or 2 salespeople selling your product successfully, that you do have some level of product market fit. And so I would wait for those indicators and not try to completely skip that sort of process of straight to an AI SDR before having at least some salespeople or sales motion, because you might not have product market fit, and then you're jumping too soon into that sort of commercial sales motion when really you don't have anything to sell.
Yeah, and it again, like the definite consistency between a few of the other people that have had on here to talk outbound. It's like outbound is not going to fix no
Hmm.
product market fit, which is like somebody else said, Patrick at Clay, who came on and talked about his outbound motion. It's they won't take on clients that don't have case studies where there's results and there's like an actual
Hmm.
logical solving of that pain point fundamentally. And so it totally makes sense to me that you need to have, because again, fundamentally, the AI needs to know the message, the ICP, and what pain point you're solving and how you're solving it fundamentally. It needs to have those inputs for them to actually deliver the outbound in the first place. So I think that's really valid. What would like one final takeaway be for people that are listening to this and are still thinking, I'm not sure, or I don't think AI SDRs are ever going to replace SDRs? Are there like any stats or customer results or things like that that you can definitively say, hey, this works and people are getting good results from it?
Yeah, yeah. So there's the biggest number I would say is, first of all, we tend to outperform humans in success in positive replies, meetings, anything you could check like this for about 5x in terms of the results for per email sent. So there's already this kind of, you get this without taking cost into the account, you get this idea of you get 5 times the performance on average. The next thing though, that's very unique is we're not a software. We're more like selling you an outcome or work. And so we actually reduce your headcount and your software costs because you don't need headcount anymore for that role. And you don't need software to support that headcount. And so the ROI is pretty tremendous. If we just, even if we get the 5 times better results, if we just maintain the status quo, which would be like the worst case outcome for us, I don't think that happens. But if even just maintaining the status quo, we have a huge ROI, or any AI SDR product, I'm sure, hopefully if they catch up to us, but they hopefully would have a huge ROI that people don't really necessarily think about upfront. They treat it like a software when you're not necessarily buying a software, you are buying more of an outcome.
Result. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so final piece, you did reference it. There's other AI SDR companies that are out
Yeah.
there. Like, where does 11x stand out in your opinion? Why, in your opinion, is it the best product on the market at the moment?
Yeah, that's super good question. Especially one frustration I have is many people inadvertently maybe or advertently ripped us off or saw us having copied us a little bit. And so as a buyer, it's super confusing because you might see 50 AI SDR companies. There's one popping up every week and you might say, try 1 or 2, and then you write them all off because you see a poor output.
Is
And
cheap for the cheaper?
exactly,
Yeah.
it's exactly. And so what I would say is that I've yet to see another AI SDR company that is actually an AI agent. And I think it was even spoken about on a Y Combinator roundtable on YouTube a week ago, is they went out and did a study of these AI agent companies, and they only found 3 out of the 500 were actually AI agents. And it's a super important distinction between us and competitors is we're not like a ChatGPT wrapper or anything like this. They might be, we're actually like a self-deterministic AI agent. And what that means is it's not necessarily a chat box where you can type in a message and it returns a message. It actually takes time to research your company. Then it creates a plan in its head. And when it's creating that plan, it has access to tools. It can use the internet like a human. It can access your CRM like a human. It can ask you for feedback or input like a human would. It can send emails like a human, etc. So it forms this plan of what it should do and then it executes on it completely autonomously. And I haven't seen anything like that in the market yet. And even outside of the SDR world, there's very few people actually operating AI agents like that. And it's going to become very confusing for buyers as more and more people claim to be. Like there needs to be some sort of almost like a diamond test or something so
Yeah.
people can see if it's real. But that's the main difference.
Cool. Love it. Yeah. And I think I would say we see very similar things at SensePark as well
Yeah.
and I think it's the age of AI, right? Like a lot easier to create software. Copycats are going to pop
Hmm.
up line center. And so again, maybe listen to this, do your research, have a test, make sure that it actually works prior to committing or writing it off to your point. Keith, you've been great, to be honest. I'll keep going back to that preemptive pain component because that for me is a massive light bulb. And I think if we can get into a world of educating buyers on their pain before actually having
Hmm.
it's a crazy world that we're going to live in. You can obviously follow Keith on LinkedIn. A lot of good content. 11x here are all over LinkedIn as well. And so you can follow them there. Keith, really appreciate you jumping on. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Great. Thanks so much, Ben.